What is up, familia? Dayspring here with an episode of Power of X-Men, where we are going to review and discuss your hot takes. That's right. On the Instagram page, I said yesterday, drop your hot takes. Give me your tea, give me your feels, good, bad, whatever you're feeling about the X-Men currently, just tell us about it. And as always, when I open up the gates like that, we get so many folks who just send in their feelings, and I have every intention of trying to get through every single one of them, but it's countless that come in, truly. So I really wanted to sit down this morning and go through some of them and discuss it with all of you as a familia. I have to tell you, I'm on a really great high right now because we had a weekend here where we found so many Marvel Legends. We got some news on Mayfix figures. I got some memorabilia back. And to give you guys all context, I found the Target exclusive Storm in person. She was such a fun find. I can't tell you the joy of not having a pre-ordered figure available to me and going into the store and finding it right there on the peg. I love that feeling. It's such an adrenaline rush. I'm going to tell you this right now. Here's my hot take. I hate pre-ordering figures. I love the hunting for Marvel Legends. I miss going to Walmart at midnight and asking them if they have their Walmart exclusive wave in and going every single night until finally that one night, like 2 months later, our contact is jumping for joy because it's a victory. It's a communal victory that I get my action figures. But finding her in person, I just absolutely loved. I also found the Deadpool Maximum figure with dupe. I cannot wait to break that down for all of you. We will review it as a familia. I'm thinking I'm going to rank like the Hulk, the Spider-Man, and the Deadpool, since those are our solid three that we have. I believe Thor is coming. Has Thor been announced? I think we go through this every single time. Has Thor been announced yet? Because if not, I think Thor is most likely our next maximum figure, but we'll rank Deadpool, Spider-Man, and the Hulk. We also found Strong Guy in person as well. Oh, I love that so much. I'm so excited that we found Strong Guy in person. I didn't have any intention of buying him because I love my Build-A-Figure Strong Guy that we got a couple years ago. But when I saw the packaging, when I saw the alternate head, I was like, you know what? I got to buy him. So we're going to break that down as well. And my X-Men comic that I had Scott Lobdell sign and write Hoboken on it because it's the issue where Juggernaut falls from the sky in Hoboken, New Jersey, of all places. I got that framed right here in Hoboken, and it looks beautiful. I'll be posting images of that. So I'm just on a really great buzz on all things X-Men. I really wanted to open up the conversation to the community. As I've always said, kind of the curse of being a podcaster is that more often than not, it's a one-way conversation, and that's fine. That is just how it works. But I really do believe that what makes the X-Men special is this community. We all have different feels on the X-Men, and I want to give an opportunity for those feels, for those other opinions to enter the conversations, because I sometimes, more often than not, I see someone else's perspective and I think to myself, okay, I may not agree with that, but I can certainly understand why that person feels that way. And I just want to make sure that those conversations are out there as a community. So we solicit everyone, we solicited the familia, we asked them to give our feels and hear their feels. I'm gonna say their truth. I will weigh in because, again, the curse of being a podcaster, you're the one who has to sort of conduct the conversation, but feel free to slide into our DMs at Power of X-Men, send an email, Paul at Power of X-Men, find a relevant post on Power of X-Men and drop your feels there. DM a friend to say whether you agree or disagree, however you hold these conversations. other podcasters, YouTube pages, cosplayers, like however you have them. I just want to make sure that these opinions are here. Some of them are salty as fuck, but that is okay. That is how we like to roll here at Power of X-Men. Take everything on the chin. We're all passionate about these characters at the end of the day. So even if we disagree, people have given thought to these characters and the stories and the animated show, the video games, everything. So let us dive in after that very long-winded intro. Let us dive in here, and we're going to kick off with, oh, this is actually a really nice compliment. We're getting Deathbird, and you were the only scooper to call it. Thank you for that. Yeah, I take any reporting we do here on the back end seriously. That's never to say that what information we have doesn't change or evolve, because a lot of behind the scenes stuff is always something that's in flux. It's always changing. So that's why I always say take everything with a grain of salt. But we wouldn't knowingly report on something that wasn't true. And I wouldn't push so hard on something unless I had a very amazing contact, and the contact was very confident and is always right when it comes to information. So that's where the Deathbird Gladiator situation came. The only thing that I sort of questioned was, would it be X-Men 97 Gladiator and Deathbird, like a two-pack? Because we were getting all those two-packs, like Rogue and Gambit, Scott and Jean, Wolverine and Logan. I was like, oh, are they going to give us a 97 two-pack with Deathbird? Because she did have a moment. And apparently, anyone can get an X-Men 97 figure. Look at you, Emma. I'm being shady to Emma. But really, Emma before Bastion, that was kind of odd, given that Emma didn't really have much of a presence in 97. And we're getting Apocalypse already. I mean, I know he was revealed for season 2, and historically he was a major player in the animated series, but, it is branded as 97, and Apocalypse has only been seen in the last episode. So anyways, I'm very happy with my sources. I trust sources, certain sources in general. I prioritize their information, and I know I don't need to worry too much because they've been vetted and they are always right. And we're going on years of them always being right. Okay, season 2 trailer looks good, but Jubilee's costume threw me off guard. I got a lot of comments about this with the trailer reaction and our trailer breakdown and speculation about Jubilee's costume looking more Generation X. The trailer is too grainy for me. For those of you who don't know, the trailer leaked online. Someone at the panel recorded it and then posted it on X the next day. Not the next day, later in the day. And I was in bed, ready to go to bed when I saw the trailer pop up on my personal X account. And I'm not usually on X, but I had been traveling. It was New York Comic Con. I was like, let me see what is the world talking about? So I went on my personal X account, and it served me the X-Men trailer, which is so odd, right? Because it's my personal, and that's usually delegated to news and fashion. That's sort of what when I'm not talking about X-Men, I'm talking about the Olsen twins fashion line and what's going on with the world. But I saw it, and it was the Jubilee parts looked very grainy. Now, she has her hair like she had in the final season of X-Men the animated series when they did the redesigns, like the bangs and like the little bit like shoulder length hair, which is her Generation X haircut. Now, it looked like, to me, it was a black costume with the yellow jacket from what we saw at the end of last season. Some people are saying that it's a Generation X costume. Obviously, that's coupled with the fact that we saw Penance in the trailer. It was a big hallmark flagship of the Generation X comic. It looked the same to me. I can't comment otherwise. I will tell you, okay, I'll give you some tea. Here's some tea. Come closer. I have not heard anything about Generation X for season 2 or season 3 of X-Men 97. I'm not saying that's not going to not happen, but I haven't heard anything regarding that. So I think Jubilee may be joining another team, even if briefly. I think Jubilee will be on another team. So I'm inclined to believe that it's just her hair has grown out and she still has a black costume, the vampire costume with the yellow jacket. I'm open to being wrong. I'm open for it to be a discussion. It is not a hill I want to die on. But from what I saw, my two eyes of this grainy footage, the costume didn't look any different than what we had seen at the end of last season, except her hair has grown out a little bit to signify that some time has passed since the season finale. So there we go. I want to read the new X-Men stuff, but I'm high key intimidated with all the events. Don't be intimidated by any of the events, dear listener. Dive right in. There is this school of thought with Marvel that has endlessly frustrated me that every issue needs to be accessible to a new reader. And sure, of course, you always want to make sure that readers have an entry point. And I'm not saying don't have those entry points, but the diehard X-Men fans that we are in this community have all sort of picked up the story along the way with the X-Men. We've been like, hey, here's this really great issue. We're midway through the story. I'm so intrigued and captivated. I need to read the next issue. I need to know what happened before. Similarly, let's say with the X-Men animated series, you just picked up with a certain episode. So I understand the utility that you're starting a new event and like, hey, let's try to bring in some new folks. But I don't know. From my experience, it's the people who are sort of thrown into the deep end of X-Men lore and stories, and they learn how to navigate. They learn how to swim through it. So I hear what you're saying, that you're intimidated, but just dive right into the X-Men comics. You're not going to be sorry. If the X-Men comic does its job correctly, you're going to be so intrigued by all these characters. You're going to ask, wait, who is that? And that still happens to me till this day. Right? We're seeing it with Age of Revelation, where I'm like, wait a minute, who is that again? What's going on with Zorn in the present, and how is it affecting this future storyline? That kind of like curiosity, that the pulling of the thread, I don't know, it's magic. It is true magic. I love the art of weekly, monthly comics. I love the art of the graphic novel. I love that marriage between words and really beautiful art. I just I think if the comic is done correctly, you're just going to be intoxicated by the entire experience, and you will eventually find the context of the story. And by the way, we live in a world of Wikipedia. UncannyX-Men.net is readily available with photos. There's no, you won't get lost. You won't get lost. I mean, some of it is high sci-fi concepts, and it's hard to sort of wrap your head around. Like even as a reader of comics 3 decades later, I sometimes get confused when I'm talking to people. I'm like, wait a minute, did I just confuse myself? Even though I've metabolized the story, even though I understand the story, but sometimes when you're trying to explain it in simple terms, just for other people to get it, you're like, wait a minute, I'm confusing myself here. It's the joy of comic books. It's a joy of comic books. Okay. X-Men books should have gone on hiatus and then come back hard around the time of the new movie. Okay. I feel strongly about this, and shout out to the person who submitted this question. I'm not going to say people's usernames because I do prefer folks to feel free that they can submit anonymously, and I don't typically always look at the usernames, but in this case, I know the account who said this, and I like that account very much. Here's the thing. I do not want any more MCU synergy. MCU synergy has fucked the X-Men comics. And I get it. If I'm an executive and I'm seeing that these Avengers movies are making like $1 billion, you're like, okay, well, let's try to make a comic book that's going to be an entry point for these individuals. But fact of the matter is, the MCU at its height with Endgame did not save the comic book industry. And literally, there needs to be a reevaluation of how we do that in the comic books. That the movies should not influence the comic books. The comic books should be the ones influencing movies. Comic books need to be doing things that are innovative and fun, the things that the movies cannot do. And it all starts with the readers. And that's something that like I've really noticed over the years with Power of X-Men, doing Power of X-Men. I think it's so beautiful that we have fans from all walks of life, from cosplayers to people who like the video games, to people who love the MCU, to people who love X-Men 97. But the passion for all of this comes from the comic books. That is your ground zero. So if your ground zero, the comic books are actually really well done, that passion is just going to emanate to the action figures we get, to the movies storylines, to the video games. Like, just I want those comic books to be good. And I don't want them to be tied to movies. I don't want to have this pandering to moviegoers because they have proven that maybe, yeah, maybe a moviegoer will see. I'm throwing out an example here, Guardians of the Galaxy, and be like, oh, okay, I want to go check it. Let me go check out that comic book. It was cool. Maybe they'll buy it like a trade paperback or an issue, but the real people you have to satisfy are those comic book readers, those diehard comic book readers, because we then go out and tell people, you need to go watch this new Guardians of the Galaxy movie because the comics are so good and they're building upon the comics. So that's part one. I'm sorry, of this really amazing question. The hiatus part. Yes. I've been talking about this, and this is not the person who submitted it, but it's my bro David down in Miami. We talked about this a couple months ago at a bar, shockingly, drunkenly at a bar, where the X-Men comic books should have taken a break after Krakoa and reset. Obviously, I come from I have a publishing background. I worked at Marvel. I worked at the Hachette Book Group. I've worked at HarperCollins. I was a book publisher long before I was an auctioneer turned X-Men podcaster. So I understand doing a hiatus for one of your flagship IPs is disastrous for your P&L. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep the lights on. I understand that. However, might I offer an alternative perspective here, which is maybe for a year and a half, you do an ultimate line and you publish as many books as you need to do, and you can get that inflated hype, the inflated sales hype where it's like, oh, we're not going to be publishing the 616 X-Men, and we're going to be focusing on the Ultimate X-Men, and everyone's going to lose their shit. Message boards are going to be crazy, but people are secretly going to be buying those books to check it out. And they have to be good, though. That is the key there. It has to be good. And then after a year and a half, 2 years, post Krakoa, you bring the 616 X-Men back. I know that's not everyone's cup of tea, but I think From the Ashes has proven to be an utter disaster. Or you do flashback books, right? Like the Emma Frost series. Like Marvel loves doing these like flashback series, these flashback miniseries that I don't know who's buying them, right? And everyone's always so shocked, you know what I mean, when they're like, oh, they're doing this book that's starring Emma Frost, but it's set in the past, and it's like, yeah, they never do well. No one ever really talks about them. I'm not saying people don't read them, but they're not large conversation points. But you could do those flashback series in a meaningful way. You could do an ultimate, but like I think giving the 616 X-Men just a little break, make us want it. That's a lesson I've learned in life. Don't get bored of something. Like make sure you feel a FOMO. Make sure you miss something, right? Because if there's something I've learned, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And it's heartbreaking. You know what I mean? When you're like, oh, I really love this, but I think I went overboard on it. Like, no, it's fine. Get a craving for it. And I think Marvel could be in a position to make us think we're missing the 616 X-Men and having them come back in a really big way. And like, what have they been up to? I do think that we need an industry leader in that. We had Jonathan Hickman resetting the X-Men with Krakoa. When in that we had Scott Lobdell doing Age of Apocalypse. In that Chris Claremont redefined the idea of the X-Men back in the day. I think we need industry leaders like that. I think this like resetting at issue 1 and telling stories that no one really cares about, and it's only infuriating your core base. Again, the X-Men comics right now are not in the best state. I do like Age of Revelation. I want to be very clear. I think Age of Revelation is really good. But the X-Men back in 2019, when Krakoa kicked off, everyone was talking about it. In fact, that's why you have the X-Men, the impassionate X-Men fandom that you have today. It wasn't Inhumans versus X-Men. It wasn't X-Men disassembled. It wasn't Age of X-Men who brought in all of these newer fans and these emboldened, passionate fans. It was Krakoa. And that's because it was a bold swing. Krakoa was a bold swing by Jonathan Hickman. And we need another bold swing, especially post Krakoa. Krakoa was too big of a concept to put back in the bottle. And if you're going to do it, that's fine. I have said it. It is documented here. I think Trial of Magneto was our first carry in the coal mine situation that something was rotting in the state of Krakoa in terms of editorial, that it wasn't actually really good. And the Krakoan age sort of went downhill after that, and it's sad. And I did not want Krakoa to go away, but Krakoa needed a reboot. It We didn't need to be a hard reboot where we forget about Krakoa. Not that they've forgotten about Krakoa, but we're no longer there. But it definitely needed. You need to reset Krakoa. And I wish that you could have had your cake and eat it too, right? You could have had the mansion in Westchester with a gate to Krakoa, and the X-Men are based in Westchester. And like the X-Men team are based in Westchester while we have Krakoa simultaneously. You can make it work. The beauty of literary worlds is that the writer can make anything work. You just have to do it correctly. All right, that's my rant. Would like to see Alpha Flight in season 2 of X-Men 97. I have no tea on Alpha Flight. That's not to say that they're not going to show up, but we did see them. Obviously, this comment is a reference to the cameo they had at the end of X-Men 97. And I agree. I 100% agree. Remember when we were all wondering who that woman was at Gambit's funeral? I talked to folks on the back end, and actually it was Aurora. Interesting enough, it wasn't any of the other characters that we sort of speculated that it could have been, but it was Aurora, because Gambit and Aurora were on Genosha together in season 1, and he helped liberate, the twins, North Star and Aurora. And so that was a little homage. I still think people were just confused on the back end, if you want my personal take. But because why wouldn't North Star be there? Right? North Star was also one who was liberated. And if you had like Domino and Richter also there, then I'd be like, okay, fair enough. But I think character designs are very similar on the back end, and people just get confused here and there. Okay. I don't read much comics these days, but I'm hyped for all things X-Men right now. Good. Good. The not reading of the comics, I think Age of Revelation is really good. I'm going on the record repeating this over and over again. I think Age of Revelation is really good. I really, truly believe that. And I think you should jump on board with it. At least read the main storylines. There's a lot of side books. I mean, I haven't had time to really sit down and go through all the side books. It's too much. It is absurd how many side books we have. But the main storyline running through Amazing X-Men and Age of Revelation, I think, read it. Give it a try. Give it the good old-fashioned try. Marvel X-Men editorial are ruining the comics because of closeted xenophobia, racism, and sexism. I think this is an unfair comment, because I do think that the current editorial office are truly trying. I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm not saying that there isn't room to grow. There's always room to grow. There's always room to improve. But one of the things that I think the X-Men office has done really well, and I very much respect, is that they're making sure that diverse characters and voices are front and center, and there is a very diverse editorial team. Again, I'm not saying it's 100% perfect. I'm not saying they have figured out the formula, but in years past, we haven't seen that level of diversity in comics, especially in the X office, and that began around the time of the Krakoan age when Hickman came on board. I'm not saying that there wasn't anything before. Absolutely, there were diverse voices and diverse artists and creators and characters. However, it became a very big priority for Marvel and the X office to showcase those voices. And Tom Brevoort, for all of Tom Brevoort's sin, I will give credit where credit is due. He has mentioned that diversity is a priority for the X-Men office. So I don't agree with it. I think a lot of the people who work in in the editorial office are diverse individuals, and they're very pro diverse voices. And you kind of see it in the line right now, where we had the most ex women solos, female identifying characters having solos. I'm doing this off the top of my head: Jean, Storm, Dazzler, Mystique, Magic, Psylocke, Savage Land, Rogue. I mean, that's seven titles already that have sounded off. Rogue is leading the Uncanny team. We've never had that many female identifying solos in X history ever. And I know a lot of them were minis. I know a lot of them didn't bring in the sales numbers, and that kind of always. I hope Marvel just doesn't get the wrong lesson from them. People want to read a Jean Grey solo. People want to read a Storm solo. I'm going to speak to Jean Grey. It's just not good. And it has nothing to do with the character, it has nothing to do with who is writing the comic or illustrating the comic. It's not a good story. Just make sure you tell good stories. So what I would love from editorial is that they look at they crack the whip a little bit more in terms of taking care of the IPs that they're supposed to be editing and making sure that a reader is getting something from a story. The Phoenix solo, I don't know what I'm supposed to get out of it. It's horrible. Versus when Jean had another solo series a couple years ago, X-Men Red Volume 1. Volume 1 of X-Men Red, the Tom Taylor, the very first X-Men Red volume by Tom Taylor. It's 12 issues. And I know it was cut short, of course, but there is a lesson. There is a character journey that is had there. And I just don't see that. I didn't see that with the Phoenix solo. And similarly, I think like Psylocke, for example, I mean, what a wonderful opportunity to showcase a fan favorite. Like everyone wants Quanon front and center. And the script was a little generic for me. I thought it was a little generic. I think it could have been essentially any character. So I don't agree that they're racist, sexist, and xenophobic. I'm not saying that does not exist. I'm not saying that people aren't, capable of that hate, but I think Marvel editorial is truly trying to showcase diversity, and I hope they continue doing so. My fear is that because these stories aren't great, because it is sort of a dark time for X-Men comics with From the Ashes, in general, that the wrong lesson is taken. I just want good quality stories. Xavier got in the way of mutant human relations more than he helped. Well, are we talking about in story, or are we talking about, his general philosophy of coexistence between man and mutant? Because I think the coexistence between man and mutant is a very beautiful idea. And certainly as a kid growing up, that idea that there was a school like Xavier's that I could go away to, I could learn to harness the gifts that made me different, and one day just live in peaceful coexistence with the people who used to bully me. I love that idea. But if we're talking about in story, Xavier, like his history of going onslaught, having Cassandra Nova hijack his body, and then destroying the Shi'ar Empire, to broadcasting his thoughts at the onset of Krakoa, being like, "Oh well, you never. We have these gifts and humanity because you have met us with such opposition. You can only have these gifts if you acknowledge us as a sovereign nation." I can understand where Xavier's ego and history has gotten in the way. That being said, though, I think, that's the fundamental philosophy, right, between Xavier and Magneto. And certainly, as I've gotten older, I have leaned a little bit more Magneto, right? I, you know, Magneto was right is something I very much identify with. But I think when you're young and idealistic, you sort of gravitate towards Xavier. The world jades you, kid. You know what I mean? I'm all about the revolution. We don't need to hide. We have to be ourselves. Whereas I think Xavier was all about being a little bit more mediagenic and showing the world that mutants were just like you. And it's very different approaches. But certainly in my old age, I think what makes us different is is something that should never be hidden. And I love being out and proud. I'm an LGBTQIA plus Cuban man, and I'm proud of it. And I think whatever gods there may be that I didn't succumb to some of the hateful things that people told me growing up. And yeah, I can get a little embittered. And looking back, I would be like, hey, this is who I am. But you know, there is merit to the idea of being mediagenic, of showing other people that yeah, I may be a mutant, but I bleed just like you. I feel just like you. I know loss just like you. So, like everything in life, it's a balance, right? It's a healthy balance. But I think taking this as like the history of Xavier and the actions he has done within the Marvel universe, like yeah, he's a PR nightmare. Xavier's a PR nightmare, but I got to tell you, I am kind of tired of the ragging on Xavier and Xavier being this the founding philosopher, founding ideology of the X-Men, but yet he's secretly a corrupt individual who's, self-serving and egotistical. The point has been driven home for a very long time. I think we just need to pivot Xavier's story a little bit, and just go back to him really honestly just having a dream. And that dream is rooted in very good intentions of a world of harmony. And, you know, taking this a step further and just thinking about today's world where it's like every time you open up your phone, your laptop, or you're just walking, you're seeing a headline, regardless of what the headline is. It's just there's something else to be sad and worrying about. Like I want some hope out there. So as a reader, I just want to see some hope. Let me escape. Hoping that Gambit and Rogue join Marvel rivals. Sipping my coffee with that one. No comment. BDM, Bo de Mayo, removing Emma from season 2 is criminal. I haven't heard that he removed Emma from season 2. I will tell you, I don't think Emma fans need to worry about Emma being in season 2. And if Emma is removed, that's something that happened after Bo left. So I don't think, as of right now, what I know, I don't think we need to worry about Emma Grace Frost. I think Emma Grace Frost has a bright future in X-Men 97. And speaking of Emma, want to see more Emma and Scott content in season 2 of X-Men 97. That's not going to happen. Emma and Scott are not going to get together in X-Men 97. I'm not saying that maybe future seasons, but for season 2, we're not going to see an Emma Scott romance. We didn't even see Emma Scott in season 1. Wolverine and the X-Men anime, that's sort of where we saw the Emma Scott relationship. And, I know I don't know if I'm in the minority, but I know because I am a Jean Grey scholar and I love our God Queen. Jean is one of my favorite characters, as everyone knows. It's Nate and Jean. Those are my 2 favorite characters, but I prefer Emma and Scott together. Paul personally prefers Scott and Emma. I think Scott is a Boy Scout who needs to come out of his shell and take some more risks. And I think Emma is a morally great person who will do what needs to be done, but needs someone to sort of wrangle her in a little bit. I think that dynamic works so well. And I think Jean historically was seen as Cyclops' girlfriend. I love her as the White Phoenix of the Crown, operating on a cosmic level, saving the universe because she's the most powerful mutant. So that's the dynamic I prefer, Scott and Emma together and Jean in the White Hot Room. I know that's not everyone's taste, especially my fellow Jean stans. I argued about this on Shades of Grey, Jean Grey, back in 2005, and I got a lot of angry messages and may have been blocked for a couple times for saying those what I just said, but I believe Jean is the most powerful mutant, and I love her not having to worry herself on earthly duties because she is a phoenix and she has the universe to worry about. And I think Emma is a deeply caring individual who is a teacher. at heart, and she wants to usher in the next generation of mutants. She wants to see mutants thrive, and I think Cyclops is the teacher's pet who grew up to be the leader of the X-Men, who grew up to be leading the school. Not perfectly, not perfectly. He's made his mistakes, but in spite of all those odds, he was able to succeed, and him and Emma just balance each other so well. Age of Revelation is really good, better than Age of X-Men. Well, no shit. Anything is better than Age of X-Men. That is not a good bar to set. The bar for Age of X-Men is very low. Very, very, very low. No, but yes, Age of Revelation is a good story. It's a good story. You don't have to compare it to Age of X-Men, which was garbage. And I love Nate Gray. Love Nate Gray, but I call it as I see it. We are objective here. It was not a good story. But yeah. Okay, let's see. I've never been more bored or disinterested in the X-Men franchise as I am now, and I've been reading since 1987. Yeah, we've talked about this at nauseum on this podcast where Flink and I talk about this, and there are other people, I'm not going to mention their names, but I get so many DMs. We have so many conversations that we are your core target for X-Men books. We went through X-Men Disassembled. We went through Inhumans versus X-Men. We read, well, I started tapping out after Trial of Magneto, but the end of the Krakoan Age, it almost feels that From the Ashes was a jumping off point for diehard X-Men fans. And again, there is this trend of people, nerds are always going to be complaining. We're always going to be unhappy about something, right? It's just, it is how it is. But we continue to read the books. We continue to go. We are Wednesday warriors, and it really is heartbreaking to see that so many Wednesday warriors who've been reading for decades jumping off the books. It truly is. It truly is. I think Marvel is too focused on the MCU and MCU synergy. I've said this before. Giant size X-Men, it should have been a celebration of Storm, of Wolverine, of Nightcrawler, of Thunderbird, of Banshee, of Colossus. It should have been a celebration of that team, which was unheard of at the time, right? These characters were just such trailblazers, and it should have been a celebration of their 50-year legacy, especially for Storm and especially for Thunderbird, because Thunderbird was killed so quickly. And this is an opportunity to give Thunderbird the celebration he deserves. And instead, we get a story focused on Miss Marvel because she's being pushed as a mutant in the MCU. And I love Miss Marvel. I love Miss Marvel as that next generation Avenger, as Carol's sidekick, as one day someone who's going to be leading the Avengers. That is perfect positioning for Miss Marvel. But to give her the 50th anniversary of Giant Size X-Men, when you have Storm, when you have Nightcrawler, when you have Wolverine, when you have Colossus, when you have Thunderbird, Banshee, like these characters, these tent poles of the X-Men franchise. Oh, it was such a turnoff. Such a turnoff. That's editorial. Your message has been received. Okay. I still replay the ending of X-Men Evolution because I wonder what the actual ending could have been. That was the actual ending. Check out our interview with Stephen E. Gordon, because they knew ahead of time that they were going to be ending. So it wasn't, they weren't caught off guard. They knew they were ending. That's a common misconception. There was no season 5 planned. Marvel wanted out of the contract. KB Toys had collapsed, so they weren't making a lot of money off of the action figures, which I know by today's standards, you're like, what? But again, it was a different time. It was like 25 years ago when KB Toys collapsed. There was no other account that stepped in. Because it was a partnership with the WB, they weren't getting the best commercials, revenue. So Marvel themselves wanted, because they were backing up the show with finances, Marvel themselves wanted that show to come to an end. And finally, and WB obviously didn't want that to happen because they had such strong ratings, stronger than Pokemon. And finally, they were let out of the contract through planning for season 4. So they were able to plan an adequate ending. Okay. Let's see what else here. Legends Apocalypse looks good, but Toy Biz has the better colors. On the fence about ordering it. Um, so the new Legends that was revealed at New York Comic Con is Apocalypse based off of X-Men 97 slash the animated series, whereas the Toy Biz, which we've gotten several Apocalypses since that Toy Biz, but keeping it to just the Toy Biz figures, the build a figure, and the was it Series 7 series, the actual smaller, 7-ish inch Apocalypse, is based more on the comic books. So, that Legends that you're seeing looks really great in my opinion, but it is animated series Apocalypse. I'm worried about season 2 of X-Men 97. I hope it's really as good as season 1. Yeah, I think if you like season 1, you're going to like season 2. I think everyone has come out and said it. Certainly, if you follow Bo the Mayo on X, I think Brad, who's the head of Marvel TV, said this in a quote that his vision, sort of what the original planning was, has remained somewhat intact. And season 3 is sort of the real test of where it's, this new direction. But that being said, though, I do know they're not going to do Onslaught. They're not going to do Age of Apocalypse. So, they did course correct. They did, in fact, course correct. I don't care for Brevoort. Can't stand when fanboys quote his newsletter like it's the Bible. Um, I sometimes read his Substack. I sometimes don't. I don't think people quote it as it's like Bible. I certainly haven't seen a lot of support for Tom Brevoort over the years. But I'm telling you, I've been following him since the Form Spring days. And I will tell you that I think he is very polarizing. He definitely likes to get a rise out of fans, but I see a lot more trolling comments about Brevoort than I do actual um, actual praise. So, I don't think anyone should ever harass people online. I think that's horrible, but just looking at the landscape objectively, I don't see a lot of praise for Brevoort out there. And I follow a plethora of comic book based podcasters, anywhere from DC to General Comics to X-Men only, people with a variety of opinions, some that I very much disagree with. But one thing that I've seen that's been consistent is that Brevoort is not handling the X-Men correctly. All right, how are we doing on time here? Should we continue going? Yeah, let's continue going. Come on, it's gonna be fun. I want to get a lot of these questions out the door because I always feel so guilty that I'm never able to answer all these questions. Although I'm still at the bottom of here, so I'm gonna have to skip around. I'm gonna have to skip around. All right, let's see where we're at here. I want more Archangel, Bishop, and Psylocke. Agree. I don't know if you're talking about this in terms of the comic books or X-Men 97. I'm going to assume maybe X-Men 97 because Archangel and Psylocke, Quantum Psylocke have been featured in From the Ashes, and Bishop has had a presence in the comic books as well. The original ending for X-Men the animated series was going to have Archangel, Psylocke, Shard, and Bishop joining the team. It really would have been nice. Um, I really wish that would have been the case. I think one of the things that kind of dumbfounds me sometimes with Hollywood executives, people work at these studios, that they don't really understand that the IP that they have, and that the X-Men at the time, a revolving roster, especially with Bishop, Archangel, and Psylocke and Shard. I'm gonna put Shard in there. Would have been just fine. It would have actually probably have made the franchise even better. So, you know, let's see where they're at. I don't think you're for X-Men 97 season 2 you have to worry about Archangel and Psylocke. We already saw them in the teaser trailer, but I think that you will be fine when seeing them. And Bishop is hopefully going to be a major focus because he is tasked with finding the X-Men, right? Throughout time. I hope season 2 of 97 is good and they better bring back Gambit. There is no question that they're bringing back Gambit. Guys, the amount of DMs I'm getting about Gambit, I don't know how much more to repeat it, and I'm coming, and I've said this before. I don't report on things if there's no legs to them, if I don't carefully vet things. And I'm telling you, do not worry about Gambit. And even if you don't want to believe me, just be like, I don't believe you, Dayspring. The post-credit scene in season 1 of X-Men 97 where Apocalypse is on Genosha going through the rubble, pulls out Gambit's card and says, "So much death." Like, don't worry. He's coming back as Death, as Horseman of Apocalypse. Oh, come on, guys. Come on. Okay, let's see. Age of Revelation with no Dazzler after a mini, a one shot, and getting arrested is a crime. Dazzler gets no love. Welcome to being a Dazzler fan for the last, since, I don't know, since the Australian Outback days, since Pride of the X-Men, the Pride of the X-Men pilot. Dazzler does not get any love, and it really is upsetting. I really wish that we got more Dazzler. And I think the Jason Lowe issues were so good. I love Jason very much. I give us more Dazzler, please. Please. I hope Gambit returns as a Horseman of Apocalypse this season. Gambit is the greatest character ever. Do you think Gambit will come back? Guys, you're killing me here. You're killing me so bad. Not even the 5 can resurrect me on Krakoa. Do not worry about Gambit. Please, can we just agree that Gambit is going to come back? It just makes sense. It just makes sense that Gambit is going to come back. I'm not going to answer any more Gambit questions. God, can season 2 premiere already? Just so we can lay this to rest. Okay. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch should be mutants and Magneto's biological children. Okay. Let me break down this very, very nuanced and complicated feelings that I have here. I want to be very clear about something. Magneto being the biological father of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, I can care less. I think found families, blended families, adopted families are so beautiful, are strong, just as strong as biological families. But I think the reason why you're saying this, and I'm going to take a guess here that you have been a reader for a very long time, like decades, is that after it was revealed in Axis that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver weren't the biological children of Magneto, they editorially they cut all ties between Magneto, Wanda, and Pietro. And to the point that we didn't even see them interact until the first Hellfire Gala. And that was like years. That was almost like 8 years that Quicksilver and Wanda did not interact with Magneto. And Tom Brevoort was one of them. Marvel editorial all said, like, well, why would they interact if they're no longer related? And you're like, but he raised them, essentially. They thought that was his father. They would still be family, regardless of their biological status. They are still family. Those bonds don't just go away overnight. So it was very frustrating. So again, if you, because of film rights, want to separate them biologically, fine, but they're still family regardless. And that's what was so frustrating and really showed that Marvel was not ahead of the curve with these conversations. Marvel likes to pride itself, and as we defended them earlier in this episode, but Marvel sometimes, for all of the preaching that they're, all about ahead of the curve, they also get some things very wrong. And I feel very strongly, as someone who has found family, as someone who brought in new members of the family that I found along the way, I I think it was such an insult. It was such an insult that they would just dismiss that Wanda and Pietro wouldn't have anything to do with Magneto and vice versa, uh, because it boils down to film rights. That's all. It boils down to corporate greed and film rights. Now, again, as long as you show that they have some kind of paternal uh, child, father, son, daughter relationship, I'm fine. I can give a flying fuck if they're genetically related. However, where I do give a fuck, and I feel strongly about is yes, Wanda and Magneto, or excuse me, Wanda and Quicksilver are mutants. They're mutants. Retcon that shit already again. Retcon the retcon. Retcon the retcon the retcon, right? Because it's gone through a couple cycles. I want them to be mutants. That is my personal preference. I will say I have taken the temperature of newer people, newer readers and newer fans of X-Men, and they don't care. So it's only us millennial fans who really carry that torch. I'm not saying that, some of the newer readers don't carry that torch, but the majority of people are like, meh, I can care less. Well, so yes, I really want them to be mutants. They need to be mutants, please. Gambit better return as Horseman of Apocalypse. You guys, I'm really done. I'm not answering all of that. I'm not answering that anymore. Okay. Let's see. No sequel or spin-off has ever topped OG X-Men Legends game. Yeah. I mean, the X-Men Legends games were truly a first of its kind because you could assemble a team based off of a larger roster. I don't think a lot of folks understand that X-Men Legends was truly a first of its kind. And I love X-Men Legends too. I love the PSP version where you got Nate Gray, where you got Cable, you got Sam Guthrie, and you got Dark Phoenix separate from Jean. It was really, I loved it very, very much. So I agree. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy like Mutant Academy 2 or the X-Men Sega game, sequel as well. That's not to say any of that. Or, Marvel versus Capcom 2, which just different games, different formats, but you know, I think I think X-Men Legends was very special, and we've interviewed the directors for that game, and those episodes are available on Power of X-Men. I have thought about, doing another channel called History of X-Men, Hawks, History of X-Men. Get it? We'll have Hawks and Pox, Power of X-Men and History of X-Men. And we started that, and I believe we have the Generation X actors interviews up on that channel. Maybe I'll slowly release those so I can point people more to that direction because I know Power of X-Men is absurd. Oh God. Oh, you're gonna get me in trouble with this next one. Okay. If Romy, which if you don't know what Romy is, it's Rogue Gambit ships. That's what you call them, Romy. If Romy weren't cowards, Romy Nito would have happened, and Remy could also, oh God, fuck the old man. Oh, I have to tell you, the Rogue Gambit ships are strong following X-Men 97. They are strong following X-Men 97. And, let me give you I'm only going to be talking about X-Men 97 in this context, in this continuity. Let me frame some stuff here. So, the reason why Rogue and Magneto happened in X-Men 97, why they retroactively put a relationship there was because they were going to build up towards Age of Apocalypse. And in Age of Apocalypse, in the comic books, you may know this, Rogue and Magneto are together and they have a son named Charles. And in order for that to feel like it wasn't out of the blue, they wanted to plant the seeds there. Now, in Age of Apocalypse, Gambit is tasked by Magneto to find the M-Cron crystal because they need to reset reality, because reality as we know it is upside down. This world, Age of Apocalypse, should not exist, and it needs to be set right. And Gambit goes into Shi'ar space, and he encounters Jaff, who is the guardian of the Emkron crystal. And Jaff is like, well, if you want a shard of the Emkron crystal, you have to give up the thing that is most valuable to you. And Gambit, oh God, this gives me chills. Gambit stands before the crystal and says, I'm just a thief from Louisiana. I've never had anything of value in my life. I have nothing to offer the universe. And Jaff looks at Gambit and says, that's not true. She believes in you. And that's when Gambit smiles and goes, huh, Rogue, this is for you. And he sacrifices his love for Rogue in order to save the universe. It's beautiful. So beautiful. And so that's sort of what they were building towards. Obviously, the world gets reset. And listen, it is just another piece of the puzzle for Rogue and Gambit that are end game. And I think 99.9% of people out there agree that Rogue and Gambit are the flagship, over Scott and Jean, are the flagship X-Men couple. I remember years before 97, years before Krakoa, I was still working in book publishing. So this is like 10 years ago. And Mr. and Mrs. X was coming out and they had just announced it. And one of my coworkers had seen it. And she's like, oh, did you see Rogue and Gambit are getting their own solo series and they're married? And she was not a comic book fan, but she watched the animated show growing up and she knew Rogue and Gambit were the X-Men couple. This is a fictional universe. Dramatic beats have to happen. I wouldn't worry about Rogue and Gambit being Endgame. I think 97 is going to stay true to that trajectory. Should Gambit get with Magneto? I don't know. Listen, that is a debate I am not weighing in on, however anyone sees it. But I think the point is we should all just really enjoy, see where the story goes. What I just said was the original intent for 97. I will see where they go for season 2 and season 3, but I don't think anyone has anything to worry about. And Romy fans, I have to tell you, it is actually really lovely. I met someone recently and we were just talking about Rogue and Gambit and the comic history, and I love seeing that passion. That's what Marvel wants. When we're seeing that, they want the shippers, they want these discussions to happen online. You can disagree with it, and I'm telling you, Power of X-Men, you have the space to disagree. It is okay to disagree, but I think there's a lot of passion in the X-Men franchise thanks to X-Men 97, and it translates into love of the comics, translates to love of the characters. And maybe Magneto and Gambit together. I don't know. I'm not opening up that can of worms. I'm still getting angry DMs from the Chris Evans fans. So leave me out of it, please. Okay. We need an accompanying Spider-Man, Avengers, and Fantastic Four animated series for X-Men 97. Agreed. I think that was the original intent. Who knows where anything is landing anymore in this world? But I think there have been plans on the back end. We did interview Sarah, the voice of Mary Jane from Spider-Man the animated series, and I don't think she I don't know her well enough. We just interviewed her, but when we asked her point blank if a Spider-Man revival was coming, she didn't think so. And she could just be giving me the company line, but I'm pretty good at sussing things out, like, is this a tease or something? And I think she was very earnest in her response. So, you know, I would love to see that. I think the Fantastic Four opportunity may have come and gone. Let's see. Um, I love Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which was inspired by Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, which no one talks about Justice League Unlimited anymore. It was wild. It was such a trailblazer cartoon in the early aughts. If I had an account that was DC Justice League focused, I would be playing clips of Justice League Unlimited endlessly. But if they do an Avengers, if they revive the Avengers cartoon in any way, shape, or form, I would like it to be, you know, Justice League animated Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which they took cues from Justice League Unlimited. That's what I would like. But I agree. I want a built out MCU, and I think they were gearing towards that. But I think the original story again for X-Men 97 was that Onslaught was going to be a threat, and if you read the comic books, the Avengers and Fantastic Four die fighting Onslaught. And I think that's what they were trying to go for with planting the seeds. Okay, Hasbro treats the X-Men very well. They might be their favorite. Yes. And folks, Grandpa Dayspring is here to remind you that once upon a time, there was an embargo on X-Men figures. We could not get X-Men specific waves. And thankfully, that time has long passed. And I think a lot of X-Men fans sort of came into the Marvel Legends hobby during lockdown, and Hasbro responded as such. So we have come a long way with Hasbro. I love the Hasbro team. I think Dwight and Dan, I just saw them at New York Comic Con. Oh, I got some tea for you. Why don't I give you some tea? And I didn't record this part. So funny. I always have my phone up and I'm always recording something, especially if I'm at a con. But at this point, I had put my phone down and I was like, you know what? Just be present. Listen to Dwight talk. Dan and Dwight know that I don't like Beast, and we started talking about Astonishing Beast, and that led to the Astonishing team and who else needs to be done. Obviously, Kitty and Colossus, do not worry. Kitty and Colossus, they're very well aware of it. But we talked about some other characters during that run. And who are some other characters? Danger. But also we talked about armor. And how would one do armor? And what would she look like? How would you do that? And the general idea was, well, this is from Dwight, that perhaps you would have the figure and then you would have 4 pieces for her big armor, right? Just a thought. So if we could really truly get a Marvel Legends armor, we will be feasting well. Okay. But yeah, I agree. I think Ryan Ting, no longer on the team, obviously really cares and listens to X-Men fans. And I did a ranking of like the 90s Jim Lee figures of Gene. And when he was on vacation, maybe like a couple months ago, and he posted something about like a Jean Grey shirt, he tagged me in it. And that goes to show you that's someone who really pays attention to the market. It's no longer on the team anymore. Dan knew I didn't like Beast. Dwight, when he saw my husband, remembered my husband from the time they revealed the Rocket Raccoon Gene. And my husband was very excited because it was like our first proper 90s Gene. So that goes to tell you, again, I'm telling you, that just goes to show you, that they're attuned with the fans. And you can't replicate that magic. You can't fake caring. And Hasbro has had some few missteps over the years, but they've always course corrected. They've always taken the blame, and they've always kept it focused on what the fans want. And that is really hard to do. Extremely hard to do. All right. Oh, guys, we are going a little long here. I'm not even halfway through these. I really want to answer a lot more. Okay, we'll go on a little bit more. Giant Size X-Men 2025 did a disservice to Legion and Miss Marvel, especially David. Yeah, they truly did. Because again, as I said already in this episode, Giant Size X-Men should have been a celebration of that team. I think you're creating ill will for Miss Marvel, who is a great character, who was on Modern Family. She was a poster on Alex's dorm room. Modern Family, the most watched television show in America, had a poster of Miss Marvel very visible in the background in Alex's dorm. And I know it's ABC, they're owned by Disney. I know all about corporate synergy, trust me. But fact of the matter is, Miss Marvel was there, and she was well received when she first came. The ill will for Miss Marvel started when you killed her off in Spider-Man and you brought her back as a mutant. And you're continuing to push that ill will onto readers. Do not, you're damaging a very great character. You had all the right recipes for Miss Marvel. Her original comic book run is very good. It is such a good comic. Please go read it. But um I think shoehorning her into a story like a celebration that should be of giant size X-Men just created a massive backlash for the character. Yeah, and I think Legion, um, there's been so much character work for him. But in fairness in story, they say it was his alters that had taken over his body. It's fine. It's just the character has had so much growth in comics to put him back to ground zero as a villain. Not really good. Not, it's just really sad. Oh, hype for anything not Wolverine. Oh, really? Oh, that like I really like I've grown to really love Wolverine, and I think the age of Wolverine being oversaturated is long gone. Right? If we're complaining about Miss Marvel today, back in the day we were complaining about Wolverine just being everywhere. And the thing about Wolverine, and you got to put on your publishing hat back in the day, and you know, audiences really gravitated towards Wolverine. They gravitated towards the Cal Dodd's Wolverine. They gravitated towards the comic books. With the movies, they gravitated towards Hugh Jackman. I mean, Deadpool and Wolverine just made $1 billion, and that stars Wolverine. So, I think Wolverine is a great flagship character in that you need that character, right? When I think of the X-Men IP, I think of two characters who are household names, and that's Wolverine and Storm. Everyone knows those characters. They may not know if they're X-Men, DC, Marvel, Avengers, Justice League, but they know Storm, they know Wolverine from the X-Men IP. Obviously, we can all say no. Some people know Cyclops, some people know Jean, and that's true. But I'm telling you, your flagship, the faces of the X-Men excuse me, the X-Men IP to people who are not comic book people, to people who do not watch the animated shows, don't really tune into the movies, they know Storm and Wolverine. And when you put on your "we need to make money" hat because Marvel needs to make a profit, people respond to Wolverine, they buy Wolverine comics. I can be forgiving and understanding as long as there's the opportunity for other characters. And I will say they have done an excellent job at making sure you don't have to have Wolverine. For Marvel Legends, the Wolverine figures do not come with a Build-A-Figure. And in the comics, they're allowing other characters to take the spotlight while a Wolverine mini series or series is on the side. That doesn't really tie into the other books. So I think they're doing a great job. I get it. We're getting the Wolverine video game, but they want to make sure that they pave the way, because the next question is, I don't care about a Wolverine video game. Give me an X-Men video game. Because we know from the leaks that happened last year, I'm sorry to report on a leak, but it is widespread at this point that Insomnia Games does have the rights to X-Men video games up to 2035, and they are planning an X-Men video game for 2030. 2030, if we're lucky, if it's on time, I'm gonna be 50 when we play an X-Men team game again. Oh, taking a sip of my coffee. I'm looking forward to Cosmic Invasion. Hopefully more games like Cosmic Invasion pop in. But yeah, um, the Wolverine, especially the video game, is sort of a necessary step in order to get um, much larger games. So I'm okay with the Wolverine game. It looks good. Rumors are Jean Grey will be playable based off of the leaks that she will be playable. So I think let us all just take a deep breath. You don't want to play the Wolverine video game. You don't have to. Let's hope that um, they're correct in focusing on Wolverine and there'll be a much larger market like the Spider-Man games. And it'll bring more fans into the X-Men franchise, and we will get a really great X-Men game. I truly feel that way. Again, it is what it is. Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, Wolverine, Storm. These are just characters. Captain America, Iron Man, Thor. These are characters. Black Widow. These are characters that sell. To larger audiences. It just is what it is, and you know, I wish that we lived in a world where we could do have only a Jean Grey video game. Psylocke, though, also, you know what I mean? You know what's really interesting? Psylocke back in the 90s was also a very popular. Rogue and Gambit, too. But hopefully one day we will get that. Um, the lack of Bobby in 97, the comics and video games makes me sad. Well, we don't really have many X-Men video games right now, sadly. I don't know why we don't have him as a skin in Fortnite. That is really curious to me. Lack in the comics. Well, he had his mini during the fall of the House of X. The fall of Krakoa. We we had that story with him and Romeo, the mini. He was in Marauders. I of course always want Bobby front and center in everything because for me, if you're doing an X-Men team, you have to have certain characters like Bobby. But the publishing cycle of comics is what it is. So I wouldn't worry too much about him in comic books. In 97, maybe I would worry a little bit. I know he was on Forge's board at the end of season 1, but some of the people I've spoken with on the back end, he may have been on Genosha. And that's, but maybe, do the dead stay dead ever? Do mutants ever just stay dead? Especially in the X-Men IP? Just something to marinate about. The Psylocke Revanche Body Swap arc was necessary storytelling. Oh, look at that. That is, ooh, that is juicy. That's something fun for us to discuss. Okay. I'm going to tell you, I have the pulse on X-Men fandom, Power of X-Men. We sort of see the pulse there. And I will tell you, 99.9999% of folks all agree that the body swap should have been undone. Right? You put them back in their original body. Psylocke, or excuse me, Betsy is back in her body, and Revanche Quanon is back in her body. Everyone agrees on that. Now, to give context on the body swap in the early 90s, there was no consideration of the implications of a body swap. And that is the beauty of enduring IPs, characters, and storytelling, is that we can always look back and build upon and improve and evolve storytelling. But the way it was done back in the 90s, it was just a very high sci-fi literary concept of body swapping, of mind erasure. So, memories are lost, clones are happening, people get their memories wiped, evil clones. I already said clones, but you know what I'm trying to say here. There was a lot of plot, and character development sometimes took like a backseat for it. So, in the context of the 90s, knowing that eventually that gets retconned, the body swap is part of X-Men lore. My qualm with today's world is that I really wish they would have done right by these characters. And, let's start with Betsy, because I think Betsy had so much great hype going into the Krakoan age with those Dawn of X titles with Excalibur, seeing her as Captain Britain holding the sword aloft and the entire cast behind her. I'm telling you, everyone was excited for Excalibur. That was probably the book that all of us were excited for. And then we read it and we were like, what is this? And I think I can be forgiving for that first volume of Excalibur if you see it as something that was leading towards Ten of Swords. if even some of the issues afterwards I thought were actually, I think post Ten of Swords, Excalibur got a bit better. It was better than before, but it wasn't good. And I wish the writer and Marvel editorial would have pivoted from telling other world stories and be like, okay, let's refocus Betsy. And you know how I would have refocused Betsy, and I've given a lot of thought to this? I would have had her as Captain Krakoa. I mean, Betsy to me represents the best and the worst of what can happen to a mutant, right? Like she had her eyes taken out and replaced with cybernetic eyes by Mojo. She has fought Sabretooth. She had the body swap. She has known love with various of the team members. She has risen above all of it and been a bright light to her teammates. She's died and resurrected. She has a complicated family history. So why wouldn't you put her as the face of Krakoa, of what the mutant spirit is capable of achieving? It is unconquerable. It is enduring. Being a mutant means that you're always fighting and you will always be victorious. I love that for Psylocke. And instead, you shoehorned her into other world stories and just put her on the side there. And Betsy is a flagship X-Men. She is an A-list X character. For Quanon, I don't like that they gave her the name Psylocke, because Psylocke was Betsy's name before the body swap, and I love her as Revanche. I think there was not much story explored in the original 90s comics with her. She sort of just died of the legacy virus with very little background on her. And then she was resurrected. And I think Hellions actually was a step in the right direction, but she has sort of just been okay. Let me tell you what I've heard on the back end, that they don't really see. This is again what infuriates me. They see Psylocke as the IP. Psylocke, regardless who is of the mantle of Psylocke, they just see the Psylocke IP. So I think with Quanon, they just think we'll put the name Psylocke on it, and that's it. We have our Psylocke IP, and I think that is such a disservice, because I think you need to take time to build out the character and give her proper dues. So, again, I've said my piece on her mini series that she's gotten. I think it's very generic. I don't think anyone was really truly talking about it in very significant ways. And I think she is capable of having great stories built around her. I like that she is in Jed McKay's X-Men. I think in Age of Revelation she was really good. So let's see where it goes. All right, guys. I'm gonna answer two more questions, and then we're gonna be done. Okay. Um, more Marvel Legends, X-Men, new characters next year, please, like Shard and Fitzroy. We all love Shard and Fitzroy. They were very big characters in the X-Men anime series. Shard's having her moment again. I'm telling you. If anyone from Hasbro is listening to this, if anyone officially involved in the X-Men is listening to this, Shard, Shard, Shard. Bishop's sister, Shard, Shard, Shard. She died, was a hologram, has not been seen since. You know, um, I think she's a character that everyone wants to see come back in a meaningful way. X-Men 97, I think they hinted at something happened with Shard, because there is a time lapse between the end of the series and the start of X-Men 97. We know Bishop found himself stranded in the future, or excuse me, in the present. And when Maddie unleashes the Inferno, we see an apparition of Shard. And so there's a hint that something happened with Shard. We love Shard so much. We love Shard so much. And I hope that we get more of her. And Fitzroy too. We love Trevor Fitzroy. We love that original figure. So I would love to see him come back again. All right, we're going to end with this one, which says, I never imagined a line-wide event centered on Doug can't interest me aside from X-Vengers. Oh, can you please? This is where we're going to end. Give Age of Revelation a chance. I'm telling you, better than Age of X-Men. Is that what someone said earlier in the episode? Better than Age of X-Men. I promise, Familia. You have nothing to worry about. It is good. I promise you, it's a like mossy apocalypse storyline, which takes cues from Here Comes Tomorrow. The universe is broken. They're bringing Cyclops and Beast's minds from the past into the future. They're going to try to set the world right. I promise you, it's a fun read. And I love Doug Ramsey. I have been a major Doug Ramsey fan since he came back during Necrotia. Of course, because we're X-Men fans, we're always going to nitpick things. But I'm telling you, it is good. And it is the best X-Men storytelling in From the Ashes. I would even dare say, when was the last X-Men story that I thought was like, man, they hit this one out of the home? I think the first issue of Sins of Sinister, the very first issue of Sins of Sinister was really good. I will say it's on so far, Age of Revelation has been on par with that. Has been on par with that. All right, Familia, thank you so much for joining. Leave a review if you're listening to this on podcast. If you're listening to this on YouTube, drop your comments below. Slide into our DMs at Power of X-Men. Hit subscribe buttons, hit follow buttons, hit whatever buttons you want or don't. But I think the key that I always have, the thing that I always want is that people are engaging and having conversations. So however you have conversations about X-Men, please take whatever nugget you got from this episode, whatever you agreed with, whatever you disagreed with, whatever you didn't think about, whatever you don't want to think about. Take that and go have a conversation. If it's on a message board, comment section, in person, at a con, just keep the X-Men conversation always going.